And there. Let's go. Live, do your shit, bitch. Use your ability. Holy fuck. One more. This is it. This is huge. Holy shit, it's a tree. Oh, I'm straight though. I can AoE anyways, just with my carry. Yo. That's it. GG. Hold on. Let's just collect my free VIP and my free SSR. Izanami. The fuck? I also bit my tongue, so if I'm talking really weird this one, it's because I literally don't understand how your brain allows you to put 1,000 pounds of bite force on your tongue. We did it. Free to play, completely free to play, actually, just because I know people are like that. You see this initiation bonus? That's what you get whenever you make your first purchase. I haven't made a purchase, that's why that's still there. Completely free to play account. Now, I started the game on global release, started on server 11, and with this team of completely free to play SSRs, I've carried myself through the entire early game. So now I am in a perfect position to assign a tier to the characters for early game. You know how the tier list has a bunch of different subsections? Well, this will be for the early game section. While it's still fresh in my mind and fresh in my brain, I'll go over every single character and tell you basically how it went. Firstly, Dracula. He has to get his ult. Once you get that ult, he starts spamming it. Also, he has to get it, as we just saw with my carry. You don't get your ult right off the bat at the beginning of the game, especially early game whenever you don't have good runes to increase your energy regeneration and stuff like that. So he does have a fault there. I'll put him in the A tier. Hodor is, by the way, how I pronounce these guys' names, I'm about to pronounce them all wrong, just so you know. None of them are going to be pronounced correctly. Hodir right here, he's actually got some pretty good multipliers for being an SR. You know, as long as you're not building a UR, then I'm sure this guy would be great as a carry for the first 10 or so chapters before he starts to fall off. I'll give him a B tier. Okay, so the thing that people don't really understand about Muse is she's not a healer, okay? Well, she is a healer. She's technically a healer because she has a little bit of heals, but she is not a healer in that sense. She's more of a support. You see how whenever she does this, it also increases your allies' attack speed by 20%, right? And there's also heals, but there's a water set that basically whenever you do a heal on somebody, it increases their dodge. Gives you a little bit of health regeneration, which is nice. Increases your whole team's attack speed, which is more DPS, and increases their dodge. The cherry on top of the fact that she has 2 area of effect stuns. Super duper good support, S tier support. Flora, dude, she just came out, but in that Oberon stage where Oberon is the boss and he's just clapping your cheeks, she is the problem with that stage. She's the reason it's so hard to beat. If you're just now starting the game and you're wondering what team, if you get this character, make her your carry because I want to see how she does. Idun is just automatically one of the best healers in the game. Firstly, if you use her, you already know what I'm talking about. If you ever fought her, you know what I'm talking about. She keeps your entire team topped off. That's just all there is to it. If she starts getting her heals off, then your team is not going down. It's that initial ramp up of having to get the ultimate, but she also gives 3 random allies the golden apples that just allow the allies to heal themselves before she even has to do anything. One of the best healers I've ever seen in any of these games ever. S tier. Is another healer, but she's more of an in-game healer because a lot of her abilities are based on overhealing so that the overhealing becomes a shield. And that's not really prevalent in the beginning of the game. I would go ahead and give her a B. Tamamane is pretty good. I mean, she has that ultimate that fires off a ton of foxfires. You will see it if you use her. The foxfires go and it hits the boss like 10 times. I'll give her A tier. Yaishine and Mia, you know what? They're pretty cool. I like how it starts out as a tank and then it moves into the damage dealer. It's pretty smart because in the beginning of the matches, whenever you need the tank, because that's whenever everybody's ramping up to get their ultimate. It's just not fair that you don't really get to choose to start as a damage dealer or start as a tank. If you could swap their positions in the beginning, I would instantly put them in the S tier because you have so much creative freedom right there. They can't be deciding on their own whim whenever it's time for them to swap to the AD carry. That's what should have already been decided before the match even started, so we'll just put him in the B. Hercules, dude, you know, it turns out that he was actually doing so poorly because he was glitched. I was going to be slick and put him in the B tier because I did notice that he had survivability issues, and that's really what his role is. He's like an auto-attacking tank that has a stun in the initial beginning, and then he has a stun with the ultimate. So it's nice to have stuns on your skills, but also he's supposed to be tanky, and I thought he was because I had earth runes on him and the shield and everything, but it turns out he's supposed to be even more tanky than that. So how I was going to put him in the B, now I'm going to put him in the A. Hercules goes in the A tier, and you know what? He probably would have been an S if he wasn't glitched out, because I would have made him a main, he would have been my main character, and I would have trashed all of the bosses I was stuck on. Sleeping on these characters that are sick. Anubis, I knew instantly, I was like, okay, he summons a bunch of mummies. That's got to be great. It's more targets on the enemy's side of the field that they have to deal with they're going to focus. I didn't even know how good that actually is. If you have a character that's going to going to like use a proximity ability and they turn around and use it on a mummy, that is golden. Not to mention that it also increases the tankiness of your entire team. He's one of those characters like Persephone that increases the tankiness of your whole team, so why wouldn't you want that? Secondly, the mummies take on his stats, so you can make him deal a lot of damage, put him on a set that increases his crit rate, and all the mummies coming up are going to do that too, so he's really good for bosses. I don't want to put okay, you know what's going on? I skipped Joan of Arc because I don't even have her. He's definitely an A. Izanami is an S tier. You literally just saw her carry me. Do I have to explain this? Do I have to make a whole video on Izanami? She is able to keep herself alive, deal a ton of damage, lifesteal in order to make sure that she stays on the battlefield, and just carry you through everything. Dude, she's carrying me through everything. S tier. Persephone is a little bit on the meh side. So I think the problem is people thought that she was a damage dealer. Definitely not a damage dealer. Does not do a lot of damage. She does not do good damage at all. The thing is she reduces physical damage taken by Persephone and allies by 25%. So okay, that's cool. It's like a support ability. One of her main things is a support ability. So if she was your main, you probably didn't get very far because, you know, she's a support. And also, she's probably not helping you that much because preventing physical damage is usually an arena thing, because if you're going against an Artemis or whatever, all of these heavy hitters that deal a lot of damage in the arena and stuff like that with physical damage, Lubu, I know that he's one of them in the arena tearing people up, she's going to prevent that 25% of the time. You know, she's going to prevent 25% of that damage. It's pretty good. So for PvP, I would rate her way higher, but PvP early game isn't even a thing. For PvE early game, I don't think physical damage is really that big of a deal. If you're running into a physical damage wall, just level up. You just need more defense. C tier. Artemis is going to be so freaking sick later on, okay? She's an 80 carry. If you don't know what an 80 carry is, I'm sure I've said it 100 times already. Attack damage carry, somebody that does physical damage with an auto attack, doesn't solely rely on her ultimates and stuff like that. You need fire runes on her to increase her crit rate so that she gets a critical strike. Higher grade your fire rune is, the more crit rate it's going to give you. The more crit rate you have, the more often you're going to crit, and the more often you crit, the more damage you've done. That's straight up all there is to it. In the beginning of the game, fire runes don't really give you that much crit rate. It's kind of hard to build her with the stats you need. 80 carries and kind of end game characters. I would say she's pretty underwhelming to carry you in the beginning of the game, and you have to survive an onslaught and all of your allies just die in one hit and she's left there to defend herself. Definitely not going to work. She does a lot of damage. C tier. Zeus is a pretty good addition to like any team as long as you're doing bosses, because he does percentage health based on the enemy's health, so he's always going to do a lot of damage to bosses. In my Discord, people are like, I'm stuck, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, let me look at your team. I look and they have a Zeus as their carry, and it's just not working. I don't know why. Maybe it's because his voltaic shield goes to the ally with the lowest health, which isn't going to be him if he's your carry. So if he's not shielding himself, there's no point in shielding an ally that's going to die anyways. I think that's where he falls off, so we'll put him in the C. My Lucifer isn't even built. People post in Discord all the time saying like, yo, my Lucifer just did this, and I look and the Lucifer did something cool, or his ultimate pushback that pushes back all the enemies 3 times, really, really helpful in certain situations. I've heard even more so that he picks up and ramps up the more you build him. It's just hard to build for free to play, but in the beginning of the game, I'm sure he's going to just pop off for a lot of things. There's been times whenever I had units I was building and I had to take them out for Lucifer because it was just so convenient. His ultimate pushing them back 3 times, all of them, and stunning them is very, very good. I think I'm going to put him in S tier for early game. If you were focusing on him in the early game, he would make it way easier. Okay, so now that we already went over all the dudes that I know what I'm talking about, for early game at least, let's move on to some other guys that I just went against and I had to fight against a bunch of times, and I'll comment on them. Not really going to land them in the rating system definitively, because if you have more experience with a character that I'm about to talk about, mention it in the comments and then I'll work that out, you know, pin it or whatever. Ganesha is a frontliner that I had never really had too many problems with, except for on one of these stages where they put 2 of them in the front line, and if they were like out of sync, how they both have area effect stomps that stun your whole team, if they're out of sync and they do that one after the other, then they just stun your team, stun your team, stun your team, stun your team, stun your team. I don't know if you can actually have 2 of these on your team, obviously not. That in itself was a pretty interesting mechanic. I'm sure you could pair it with another character with a similar ability. That would probably put them in like the B tier. Even just doing that isn't good enough to put him in the B tier. This dude is pretty underwhelming. All he has going for him is a stun. A lot of people have stuns too. You know what? D tier. Yukiona is sick. You know what? Everybody asking me who they want as their carry, I recommend building her, okay? She has a freeze and she has an area effect. That's all you need for the beginning of the game, man. That's all you gotta do. She has single target, she has area of effect. Just build a team to make her safe, and she should be fine. A tier. Merlin, now this is one of those dudes, he reminds me of the Pit Lord on Rage of Destiny, if you know what I'm talking about. Prevents enemies from using their ultimate abilities and stuff. It never really gave me too many problems, so I'll just put him in the C. Mulan looks sick. It sucks that I never get to see her, but she looks like she has a lot of damage. If someone wants to build her, go ahead and let me know. Keep her in C in case there's just a reason that I never see her, but as for now, her abilities look great. Thanatos Natos is a tank. He's one of the only characters that gave my Izunami a run for her money on a 1v1. I know whenever I was stuck on stages with Dracula, as long as I got Izunami in a 1v1, she would always win against the Dracula. But whenever I get her in a 1v1 with the Natos, she times out. So he has to have some tank ability to him. I'll put him in B. Eos looks so good, especially because her abilities deal damage to random enemies, which means if there's only one enemy, it'll hit that boss plenty of times. So she could definitely get you through some boss stages if you wanted to get through boss stages, but she targets an ally with the lowest health for heal. If she was your carry, she probably won't have the lowest health, so that'll be a bit of a wasted skill. Everything else looks really nice though, so Hey, Baldur is really good for the first 10 seconds and falls off super hard because he has a big buff to his defense in the beginning of the match. Put him on Earth runes, he would have double buff to big defense in the beginning of the match, making him a super tank for like 10 seconds, but then after that, he just does nothing and turns into nobody. D tier. Oberon, I've been a little bit stuck because the Storm of the Blades is like the Yasuo wind wall, where it just blocks all damage and debuffs for a few seconds in front of him. The thing that gets me is all of his abilities are single target. I feel like if he had an area of effect, he would be way better, but it's gonna take too long. If there's like 5 enemies really giving you a run for your money and you have to kill one at a time, it could possibly take too long. C tier. Cleopatra is fine. People are jumping in my comments saying, you know, I use Cleopatra, she's nothing special, nothing great, but she's not bad either. You know, I could totally see that. Her damage is poison based. Poison is like a setup sort of a thing, so she's probably an end game character. I'll put her at D for the beginning of a game. Joan of Arc is a tank that was bugged, so unfortunately anything I say about her isn't really going to make sense in the context of that she was just changed. As for a tank, you know, for tank purposes, I'll put her in the C tier. Lubu is okay. You know, I have the same experience as someone in my guild that uses them. They say, I use Lubu and I don't know why, but every time I use him, I pass the stage. An auto attack master that just has a ton of multi hits for some pretty decent damage and physical resistance and life steal up 50%. So he's Warwick, you know? He does decent damage and keeps himself alive. I could see that. As a carry, you know what? That's like A tier carry qualities. Medusa is cool. I think that people really focus on Artemis more than Medusa for some reason, but Medusa has an auto attack that branches off and hits multiple targets. Again, with the same problem with 80 carries is that she's not gonna have 100% crit rate right off the bat, so it's gonna be hard to get her to do what you need to do. But she also has that AoE, this is like an AoE freeze or an AoE petrify, probably like the PvP version of Artemis. So in PvE, not as good for early game. Put in the C. Hades is another tank. He's like another one of those Anubis tanks, but the thing about Hades is he's more focused on keeping himself alive, as Anubis is more focused on keeping your teammates alive. Hades' abilities are just solely for the purpose of keeping him alive, which is cool if you want a stalemate, but he doesn't do a lot of damage. He's not really a carry. As for a tank, I'm sure he's a great tank, but you really want to support your carry. Your carry is number 1 in the beginning of the game, so we'll put him in D. Dionysus, I don't even have him yet, so someone please give me your Dionysus. Let me use him just so I can see what he does. If you have a damage dealer and you're going through like chapter 4 and you're like, wow, my character is one-shotting everybody. Like, yeah, any character would one-shot everybody on stage 4. One thing that I really like about Susano is you get to choose where he teleports to in the beginning of the battle. So if you put him across from a squishy that's going to wreck your whole team, he'll wreck the squishy and in turn make those matches that make it hard for like Izanami because she has to do area of effects. Those fights that are hard for her become easy for Susano because he neutralizes the threat right out the bat. The problem is when he teleports back there and you're not just poning on some low-level noob NPC and it's actually enemies that can deal some damage, he's going to teleport back there and get completely annihilated because everyone is going to turn around on him and just completely blast his ass. So it depends on the stage. He could be really good, could be really bad. Depends on the stage. But as for early game, dealing as much damage as he can do and having that control to neutralize whatever enemy you choose to neutralize in the beginning of the match is going to put him in the S tier. Athena is a toss-up. Either someone has Athena and they say that she's amazing, or someone has Athena and they say that she sucks. They don't know why everyone's saying she's amazing. From what I can tell, she has an area of effect shield that heals all of her allies. You have to get that all the way up to level 4 to even get it to recover 2% of an ally's max health every second. That's not a lot of healing, that's not a lot of buffs for these tanks and stuff. You know how I keep saying with Anubis, you want them to be able to benefit your carry and benefit the rest of your team. That's not early game material. She's not really an early game tank. I'll put her in D tier. Yuma is a UR that they do not give you copies of for free. Lucifer, they give you copies and they give you multiple ways to get Lucifer, so you can at least get him up to like Orange Crystal. Maybe not Mythic or anything like that, but these other URs, unless you're just the luckiest man in the world, if you pull 10 nuance and you're actually the luckiest person that ever existed, that's going to be really good for you for the beginning of the game. But it's probably impossible and it's not going to happen. So for early game, building her and putting her on your team, It's probably going to be the only time that's even viable, because she's going to fall off later whenever you can't ascend her enough. I'm going to say she's a C. I feel like Lilith is just too complicated for people to get into. Like, I'm not pay to win, so I'm not going to have her as my main. I knew better than to have a UR as my main. She seems really complicated. Like, you have to worry about what form she's in, you have to worry about whether she's in a Guardian or Shadow Arc form, your teammates actually matter in her placement stuff. I don't think anyone's tested her enough, honestly, to see if she's actually good or not. Can we at least get someone to build her and confirm that she's bad, like someone that can actually figure out what she does? It's putting her into practice and seeing it in action versus strengths and weaknesses that actually matters, and nobody's doing that because she's labeled as an F tier. For that reason, we're gonna bump her up to the D. Which leads me to Iset. You know what? It's very good, very good, very good, very good. Iset is another one of those characters that they have a lot going on. Beginning of the battle, sets the clock in front of her every 15 seconds, deals damage to all enemies equals 12% of her own damage taken during that period. So that means she had to have been focused as a tank for that ability to be useful, right? But what about this one? Causes all allies to gain 10% of her attack for 8 seconds. Every second of the time, Iset restores 20% of the energy gained to those heroes herself. Now this implies that it wants her to be both as an attacker so that she could help benefit your allies even more. Can't build her as an attacker and as a tank, so how are you going to build her at all? You also have to get multiple copies. She seems really, really good, but for the beginning of the game, probably a D. And that's it. So, if you want to go ahead and take my experience, log into your tier list or whatever, I'm not saying this is the definitive tier list or some shit like that. I'm saying that this is my experience for the beginning of the game. So you guys go ahead and tell me your experiences for the beginning of the game so we can work towards a more accurate beginner game tier list. But other than that, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. And I'll see y'all later. Bye.